have to say, as we close in on Thanksgiving, I'm still haunted by the memory of Thanksgiving 2023. Was it Charles Dickens with A Ghost of Christmas Past?
Yep.
I know that because in 2017, Ron Wolfley dragged me across London to go to Charles Dickens' former home and watched Wolf sit there and gaze in wonder at Charles Dickens' writing desk for more than a half hour, taking about 400 pictures. But Danny, there I was last year, and we sat down to Thanksgiving dinner, and out of nowhere, unbeknownst to yours truly, the wife said, "And Paul will handle Grace and have something to say." And I was totally unprepared.
I find it hard to believe you were at a loss of words.
I had totally...
I got a lot of problems with you people.
I should have done the airing of the grievances. You're right. In hindsight, either A, I should have gone airing of the grievances. B, I should have gone into some football talk. Coach speak. We're going to take it one fork at a time, one serving at a time here. Instead, after saying grace, I had nothing. I had nothing prepared. I had a couple of pale ales in me. Wasn't really thinking straight, and it was not good.
I've heard you're a good ad-libber, though. I don't understand this. Yeah. I mean, I've been around you a long time. You seem fairly decent at ad-libbing.
I haven't folded like that and since probably college radio, women's basketball when I had to call a game. There's been bad, and then there's been really bad. So I'm going to defer to you guys if you have something to say off the top of this Thanksgiving edition of Cardinals Underground, brought to you by Pacific Office Automation, because based on last year, I'm definitely way down on the depth chart.
Are you prepared for Grace this year?
Thankfully, we're going on the road. It's a road game. We're going over to some friend's house for on Thanksgiving, so I don't have to worry about that. And for that, I am truly thankful on this Thanksgiving.
So wait, you don't have any grace if you go somewhere else?
I guess that's the host.
I'm not responsible for it.
That's the host's job, I guess.
Yeah. So my guy Jules, Jules. Yeah, look, the bar was set really low last year. You'll be better this year than yours truly was a year ago.
What are you bringing for Thanksgiving, Paul?
That's a great question. I haven't figured that out. I'm taking it one day at a time here till I work best on deadline, Danny. How about you? I know what you're bringing. In 3, 2, 1. What has the blowback been around the green bean casserole this year? You know.
I do lead that train. I really I haven't had the opportunity. I haven't. No, I'm not eating Thanksgiving with Kyle. I really haven't had the opportunity to talk about green bean casserole this year. So, thank you for opening up that door, Paul.
The floor is yours, Danny. What should be known or said about green bean casserole?
When made correctly, green bean casserole is a top Thanksgiving dish. Just delicious. Now, it is not something I will ever bring to a non-family Thanksgiving meal because I know that it is not well-liked, and I'm not going to put in the time and effort for something that only I am going to eat. It is a dish. Everyone's family has a dish that works for them and everybody loves and might not be as popular with others, and green bean casserole is one of them. In fact, my sisters and family members, some are gluten-free, dairy-free, all that stuff. We make sure we have a green bean casserole that fits everybody's dietary restrictions so that everybody can enjoy green bean casserole.
Who knew that green bean casserole was so verseful? I just learned something.
The more you know.
I had no idea.
Go ahead and put on a couple pieces of bread with some mayonnaise the day after.
If I said the most hated player in sports, who would you answer?
I'm sorry. That whiplash. I'm hurting right now.
No, because green bean casserole is the most hated player, if you will, on the Thanksgiving table.
In the NFL or just period?
I'm just trying to think.
Cranberries.
Like who would get that moniker right now? The most hated player in sports. If you want to go NFL, great.
Patrick Beverly.
That's a good one. Draymond Green.
We got an NBA list.
Yes, that's
more
a good
than anybody.
Why don't we go through your list of incompetence?
Oh, that's true. I should. Well, Danny, I won't put green bean casserole on that list.
That would be kind of tough.
I meant to look for a player.
No, I won't put that on there.
Not GBC.
I mean, no. But you mentioned cranberries. Danny, I have to stand up in defense of cranberries. I mean, come on now. As long as it's just once a year, basically, cranberries on Thanksgiving.
Are you talking about the thing that comes out of the can that looks exactly like the can?
That's acceptable. I will take that.
I'm okay.
I will take that. I'm not above canned cranberry sauce. Now, if it's homemade, great. But, I'm not a snob when it comes to cranberry sauce.
See, I'll be honest. I don't. Thanksgiving, I could kind of. I mean, I like the time off. I like the football. The food itself, I'm give or take. But I've reached the point in my life. If Dani likes green bean casserole, then damn it, she should be able to eat green bean casserole.
That's right.
And if you want canned cranberry sauce, go for it. And if I want to tell my family before they come over that, we might just be getting some takeout Chinese, then you'll live with it. Not this year. We're doing kind of more or less traditional, more or less.
I'm about to draw the line at the takeout Chinese on Thanksgiving.
Why?
But Darren, you do you, whatever.
Thank you.
That's fine. That's
we're talking about being inclusive here.
It's like I want to be offended, but I know I shouldn't be, so I won't go there.
Thanksgiving's one of those holidays where I feel like if you're not with your family eating the dishes you grew up eating, you don't really like Thanksgiving just as much. Like I love the food at my family's Thanksgiving, and I feel like whenever, although I'm grateful to be included when my family's in Texas and I'm here and going to somebody else's Thanksgiving, I feel like you just don't like the food as much.
See, for me, like both my children are now, we're empty nesters. They've actually, this is the first holidays where they're both living elsewhere, although down the street, more or less. They've both grown up with me covering the NFL. So like, this has always been like, usually I'm going over to the facility at least for a couple hours while I'm having practice or whatever, and we kind of work around that. And
Darren, do you take your pest control service down the street, and service the homes of your two sons?
I do not do that.
No, you don't do that.
Well,
okay.
First of all, they don't live that close.
Because I've tried to book you now for a few months,
I
and
understand that.
You won't go outside your own neighborhood. But maybe if it's your sons and they're down the street, no.
You know what would have been nice is if they would have taken me up on the multiple times over the years I've asked them to, shadow me, and maybe they could learn how to do it themselves.
That's right.
They didn't take me up on that.
Well, what you need to do is do it in video form so they can watch it on TikTok, and that's how they'll consume it. That's how you get them to watch it.
By the way, circling back to the Vikings game, both of them were very disappointed it did not get flexed to Monday night because they don't care about me and how much that would have screwed me over.
Right.
And all they cared about was like, we want the Cardinals to be on national television.
Right.
I will say it's been made much easier not being able to go home for Thanksgiving this year because obviously in Texas it is all surrounded around the Cowboys game, and you're eating at halftime and watching the halftime performance. Tommy DeVito or Drew Lock against Cooper Rush was not an incredibly intriguing football game to make sure I went home for 24 hours to watch with my family. So thank you,
Okay.
I guess.
All right, couple comments. Number one, Baker Mayfield, so very wrong, the manner in which he did the Tommy DeVito. It's not in the elbows. It's in the wrist, okay? It's in the wrist. Any good Italian, it's in the wrist, all right? That's where you speak with your hands.
You said a couple things. I don't mean to cut you off, but it's funny that you brought up Baker Mayfield right there because speaking of Thanksgiving, he is now suing his brother and his father for millions of dollars.
Oh, I saw
and somebody
that.
said, boy, it's going to make for an awkward Thanksgiving. But anyways, back to the other thing you wanted to mention.
So I just mentioned that one. And then I can relate, Dani, because my wife is from the 313, so the tradition is to watch the Lions. And, it sort of throws us now because, a good quarter century, we've watched the Lions lose, and then you try not to lose your appetite. The football's so bad, and all of a sudden you got the 10-1 Lions. It's a little different.
I'm originally from Detroit.
There you go.
Watching the Lions was always, watching both those teams was always a thing, but yeah.
Remember we told Larry Foote, Detroit native, former Cardinals linebacker and linebacker coach, remember we told him we both were from Detroit?
Yeah.
Our birth certificate said Detroit, Michigan. He didn't believe us.
Well,
he didn't believe us.
He didn't want to.
Maybe he didn't want to. He didn't want to associate with us. Maybe that's what it was.
I'm sure he feels a very certain culture that he feels we weren't part of in Detroit. And that's probably true.
Yeah. We're dorks in his eyes. Let's just bottom line it. That's true. Okay, that's good. So basically, the bottom line here, Dani, is the green bean casserole on your table is perfectly fine. It's sort of like when Draymond Green is on your team, that's good, but if he's on another team, that's bad. So, okay. That's
correct.
Good. Okay.
Spot on.
All right. Well, okay. That's good. As for losing our appetite, is this where we segue into talking about Leonard Williams in the Seattle game? Because
you mean Aaron Donald?
That guy. Hey, you know what? We're on the same page here on this. We have ESPN going on right now here, Darren, because I'm seeing 99, and you talk about ghosts of Christmas past. He was wrecking a game like the other 99 for the Rams.
I saw something where that was his best pass rushing performance since 2018.
You know what? I saw that too. So it begs the question, did somebody make him mad? Did he have beef with Evan Brown in Seattle? What happened? What is the cause and effect? What's the catalyst for his best game in 6 years?
I know it's coming. Evan Brown, I was just playing with you, maybe? I don't know.
I mean, honestly.
The way the entire offensive line for Arizona played to put that all on Evan Brown in his
That's
Seattle
fair.
revenge game, Paul, does not seem that fair.
Okay, I take that back. How do we explain the Leonard Williams going out there like the NFL Defensive Player of the Year, even his own head coach? The comment from Mike McDonald was, I knew I had a great game, and then I looked at the box score in the stat line, and I said, oh my gosh, he really did play out of his mind.
I will say this, and we're going to obviously get into a lot of what the Cardinals did and didn't do, but from the Seattle side, and we all talked about it a little bit last week on various platforms, Seattle's defense has played much better over the last month, and was it similar to, again, what happened to the Bruce Arians offense the first half of 2013? Did Mike McDonald just need a half a year to really get his guys to buy in and really understand what he's trying to do? Because it's not a one-off. People are kind of implying like this is a one-off, and what happens if they're still playing this way when they come to State Farm Stadium next week? And I think this is the Seahawks defense we're going to see going forward with McDonald, and you better figure something out.
Did you notice when you open up the Seahawks press release going into the Cardinals game week 12, they had one of the stats almost near the very top, definitely above the fold, was since week 9, the Seahawks run defense has been 5th in the league. They were very adamant about pointing out that the run defense isn't as abysmal as maybe the reputation might suggest from the last couple of years in the first half of this season. And to your point, I wonder if there's a Jonathan Gannon effect going on a little bit in that they've replaced personnel over the first half of the first year under their new defensive-minded head coach, sort of like the Cardinals did a year ago. Got rid of a few players, Marco Wilson, and then they moved on and they improved quite a bit on the defensive side. Well, they cut their leading tackler like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and they brought in another inside linebacker, and they sort of – it can take a new coach and a half season to figure out what you have in terms of your personnel, because there's nothing like regular season reps. You can guesstimate all you want based on training camp or preseason, but you don't know it till the games start.
When you look at the numbers going into that game, Seattle had the 27th ranked defense. They lost 4 at home. They are, though, adjusting to their new head coach, and clearly that culture is starting to catch on. And Lumen Field has always been a tough place, not only for the Cardinals, any opposing team to go visit. Seattle was just due for a big game. Now the question is that who they are? Is that who the Seahawks are going to be when they come to State Farm Stadium in a week? Or is that going to be they just had a really good game at home and the Cardinals are going to be able to maybe get back on track, first against the Vikings and then when they face the Seahawks?
All right, that's a good question. Here's my follow-up question. Did the Seahawks defensive line feast on the fact the Cardinals were forced to use the silent count? And is the Cardinals O-line much better just based on the fact they're at home and the Seattle D-line doesn't have that little extra half step because of the silent count? Did they get a fierce get-off because of the silent count?
I mean, it's possible. But again, now we're talking about a game in 2 weeks. When we talk about the game this week, it's probably going to be loud, and you're
Same
probably
deal.
Yeah,
you're right,
and you're playing a much better statistical defense than the Seahawks this week.
Is that true? I haven't done the deep dive into the Vikings defense.
Number
yet.
one against the run,
defense.
top 5 in takeaways, top 5 in sacks, and Brian Flores.
And number 1 in aggressiveness, right? Isn't Brian Flores always number 1 in blitz rate? Or near the top, right? He's ultra aggressive.
Interviewed for the Cardinals head job.
Yes, he did. Yes. And you had the joint practices 2 years ago, Jonathan Gannon's first year in Minnesota. And based on that,
didn't go well.
He did not hold that back. I mean, actually, honestly, are we in the trust tree? Cardinals probably need to send him a thank you note because they got a real sense of who their starting quarterback was at the time against some regular season looks in those 2 joint practices where they went 11 on 11, ones against ones. And
well, they
made a quarterback
who
change
their quarterback
at the end.
Wasn't.
Right.
Because they certainly didn't find out who it was because the guy who wasn't there that day.
Yeah.
Those days.
Yeah, well, meaning
yes.
It necessitated a move based on they got a real read on their quarterback based on those joint practices. That's all. Although, on the other hand, the Seahawks defense did not stop Trey McBride. And I said this with Craig Grelu. He had 12 for 133, both career highs. Honestly, he could have gone 15 or 20 catches for 200. He was so wide open a lot of that game.
Even when McBride wasn't open, he was finding ways to make those spectacular catches. When you look at the numbers, you think, okay, He hasn't really found the end zone. But then when you watch him play and you see the difference he makes in the games, you can understand why he is a top tight end in this league. The unfortunate part behind that is McBride was really the only reliable receiver. Nothing else really got going. Marvin Harrison Jr., Michael Wilson each had a handful of a few big catches, but the offense could not move the chains. That all starts with the run game and James Conner, who had just 8 yards on 7 carries. The Cardinals held to just 49 yards on the ground. This is an offense that needs to be able to run the ball in order to get things going and create rhythm and really start to move down the field. That was taken away by the Seahawks defensive line. They did a fantastic job, Seattle did, in eliminating the Cardinals' run game. And it was just the entire offensive line. It was not just one side. They were just getting beat. Like, at times, the offensive line was getting bullied in the pressure that Kyler Murray was under.
We've talked in the past a few times about Kyler Murray's level of play and whether he runs the ball enough and all these things. And my argument is going to be that James Conner right now is the true bellwether of this offense in terms of they're 5-1 when he has 100 scrimmage yards. And they are what? 1 and now 4 with him getting under 100 scrimmage yards. And that's what he had. I think he had 49 and, like you said, 8 yards rushing. He's just too important of a player and too important of what's going on to be shut down like that. And you got to find a way to get him off. I was super disappointed about the running game. I'm not saying that I expected the Seahawks not to continue to play better than they had been against the run, but I did not expect that little of performance, and it really showed that whole fourth down sequence that ended up being the pick six. They get, I think it was like 2nd and 3. They get a couple yards, they couldn't get it, and then they throw once to Michael Wilson. It's incomplete, and fortunately, Seattle had called the timeout right before the play. Yep. Then they called the other play, and they sniffed out the run, which almost always works. And part of the reason I think Devon Witherspoon was able to play that so well is because there was a lot less fear of James Conner getting the ball right up the middle than most games.
Yeah, that whole sequence, my takeaway was, wow, okay, do the Cardinals need to adjust to the adjustment now? Meaning, on 3rd and 3, James Conner stuffed the entirety of the game. Obviously, Seattle's going all out. They know that stat probably that Darren just cited. When James Conner is the workhorse and he's productive, Cardinals don't lose for the most part. And when he's stopped and stymied, guess what? They have a real difficult time winning. So if you're going to pull the old Bill Belichick and take away what the other team does best and make them play left-handed, A, they take away James Conner, and then B, Cardinals have shown that before, and they got to have it down. So what do? They put it in Kyler's hands and let him use his legs, and they knew that. And Devon Witherspoon was more than prepared, and he was out in the flat, and one of the few guys who could match Kyler's speed. Kyler knew he wasn't going to get the edge, even though Michael Wilson was open, and he was just so fired up, and the adrenaline and him running so fast and the velocity and everything, He overshoots the intended target. But I wonder, is that game more than a loss for the offense? Do they need to change their ways, self-scout a little bit, break some tendencies now that you're going into Week 13? Is that a valid question? You
always need to self-scout. That's something that needs to be done throughout the game every week and dependent on who you're playing. That pick six throw by Murray was not the only poor decision that was made in that game. That's what feels so different from what we've seen from Murray this season. We've talked on this podcast countless times how well Murray has been with the ball in terms of protecting it, the decision-making, the accuracy, the ball placement. A lot of the throwaways were close to being picked off or being the wrong decision, or it just, the decision-making, the accuracy as a whole from the quarterback was not up to par from what we have seen the rest of the season. Some of that is in part because of the duress he was under the entire game and didn't have the time or the space. And part of that's also receivers have to get open. If your quarterback's going to be able to scramble, somebody's got to get open for him to make a play. The only person who was really able to do that consistently was Trey McBride. When you're going up against a Vikings defense that is going to be more stout than Seattle, you're absolutely going to have to look at yourself and see what was working and what wasn't, and what do we need to change this week going into Minnesota.
I mean, again, for me, I think it's a legit question, but for me, ultimately, it's going to be how the coaches determine why it got sideways. Like, if you're just getting whipped up front, maybe that's just a one-off game.
And I asked this question during the game. I said, what's the adjustment when a 3 technique is blowing up your interior offensive line? Is there an adjustment?
Yeah.
What do you do? I'll say this, as far as Trey McBride goes and Kyler Murray, as productive as they have been, and he's top 3 among tight ends all year long, 0 touchdown catches, it's almost like yours truly with a putter in my hand, the yips. It's almost like Kyler sees Trey McBride in the end zone and the yips set in.
There's two examples now, right?
There is.
Yeah.
And obviously that would have changed everything. That would have made it a 3-point game in the fourth quarter.
Well, and I'll be honest, when Michael Wilson made his unbelievable overhead catch, I thought for sure that was going to end in a touchdown and that was going to change kind of the direction of the game. Yeah. And for them not to get in the end zone with goal to go, which was the first time all season that had happened, yeah, it just felt like, okay, the offense just isn't going to do it today.
The only reason after that spectacular catch by Wilson to think that there was a chance the Cardinals could have turned things around and still have been in that game was because of the defense.
Yeah.
It wasn't with how the offense was playing at times, and you just had a handful of poor decisions or lack of execution. I mean, that was the lowest for the offense. That was the fewest points, fewest first downs at 15, fewest rushing yards at 49 all season. It was not a good game. And I don't like saying, oh, well, sometimes you're just due for, a bad game and a bad performance to bounce back. We said that about Green Bay. So I don't want to sit here and say the same. Washington, the same against Seattle. There's a difference between losing games when you're in it, and sometimes you just make one less play than the other team. And then there's games where you lose because you did not play well on your own accord. And that's what this is. And now it's up to the Cardinals to mentally be able to lock in and bounce back, which we have seen them do this season. If you are looking for a positive, though, it was the defense. Absolutely.
The number of players that talked, and I don't know if you've had a chance to talk to any, Paul, but like the number of players that I talked to, Garrett Williams, Zaven Collins did it in his press conference, a couple other ones, like the first, you're trying to find something positive after the game, and you talk to them about, hey, you guys played an excellent game, and the first word Garrett Williams was like, I didn't think we played that well. I thought we played really sloppy. He goes, I think it's a testament to our talent that we were able to get some things done, but I thought we were really sloppy. And I'm like, I don't know if could they have been better? Yeah, but maybe it's the bar that I hold this defense to that I thought they were really, really good. I had somebody in the mailbag talk about like they had no pass rush. I'm like, I thought they made Geno Smith get off his spot lots of times, and that's one of the reasons the Seahawks weren't great offensively. And in terms of the running game, the Seahawks weren't that much better running the ball either than the Cardinals, and the Cardinals were terrible.
Yeah, there aren't many backs I would put in the category of James Conner in terms of breaking tackles in the NFL. You can count them on one hand. Kenneth Walker's one of those guys.
Yeah.
I mean, he is a tough tackle.
And he really didn't. Like, there was a couple, but for the most part.
He shook a few guys, but not, yeah.
I think he averaged less than 3 yards a carry.
Really hurt him more probably in the receiving game, Kenneth Walker, in terms of some of the yards after catch. But, and I had some people say, oh, Paul, was it bad energy? Was there not enough intensity down there? Attention, everybody. When you go to Seattle, it's guaranteed you're going to have the requisite amount of energy, intensity, urgency, because walking in there, it's sort of like Dani walking into a Thanksgiving dinner party with a bunch of people she doesn't know and holding her green bean casserole. It's you against everybody, okay? It's you against the world. That's what it is. There's no change. Now, in the last drive where they went 8+ minutes and they had those 3 third down, conversions, was the defensive front a little gassed maybe? A little bit. Nick Ross referenced that. Geno had some.
That's what happens when their offense is on the field for 8 minutes.
Yes, and Geno's extending plays, and we get that. But you're right. It is amazing how effective the Cardinals have been as a scoring defense in particular recently. But to hear the players tell it, there's still a lot that needs to improve. That can improve.
Yeah.
And by the way, is Garrett Williams, where is his season going? How under the radar is he? I'll just tell you on this week's Coaches Show, Jonathan Gannon, effusive in his praise of Garrett Williams and the sort of ball that he's putting on film.
Garrett Williams must really like playing at Lumen Field. First game his rookie year last year. Yeah. He had a pick. He had another one in the end zone this past week. Williams and the rest of the youth of that secondary has been really nice this year to see the progression on a week-to-week basis and just the tight, sticky coverage. They're not drawing penalties. Felt like a lot of the penalties were actually on offense, one of them negating what should have been a touchdown for the Cardinals. Williams is doing a fantastic job with everything that's asked of him to do in the second year in the defense. And the Cardinals defense as a whole has just continued to improve on a week-to-week basis. They've given up just 5 touchdowns since week 7. They are one of the top teams when you're looking statistically since around that time frame when they started to go on a run right before the bye week, just continuing to get better every week. And that's without Darius Robinson, who hasn't stepped foot on the field yet. So the defense continues to ascend. They are what kept the Cardinals in the game in Seattle. And now they have an interesting test where you've got Sam Darnold, but you've got Justin Jefferson, you've got a whole plethora of
Addison, Hawkinson.
Yes, of Aaron Jones in the backfield of offensive weapons to defend.
Yeah, Jordan Addison just went for 8 for 162 and a touchdown. TJ Hawkinson over 100 yards receiving. Aaron Jones over 100 yards rushing. But Darius Robinson, you name dropped the rookie first rounder. You know, since I need a boost of positivity here before we go into the Wise Guy trivia, Darius Robinson, oh, please let it happen this week. Oh, please let him be half of what Leonard Williams was in Week 12 at some point in his career, because you understand the value of a game-wrecking interior defensive lineman, how that can just disrupt an entire offense. It can rattle a quarterback. It can destroy a run game when you hand the ball off and this guy's already in your backfield. And maybe, just maybe, especially if you're fighting for a playoff spot in late December, because I'm going to be realistic. I'm not going to put him in the Hall of Fame till at least late December. Okay, Darius Robinson. You know, maybe he can evolve into that. Might take him a few weeks. But come on, we can daydream at this point, right?
Well, everybody's been daydreaming about Darius Robinson, I think, at this point. It does. I mean, Jonathan Gannon did say he's on track to play this week. I would expect him to make his debut.
Hello.
Now, what does that mean? How many snaps? We'll see how that goes, assuming he's out there. But yeah, I think it makes a big difference. Unfortunately, with you're coming off a game where you'd rather be talking about how Marvin Harrison was going to go off this week, maybe rather than Darius Robinson, because the defense played pretty well. It's the offense that needs some kind of spark.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. All I know is based on what we saw in a lot of the one-on-ones against starters. I get it. He hasn't played since the Cotton Bowl, and that was kind of a sobering recollection on his part.
Also in Dallas.
You realize, but at this point, I'm just stalling before the inevitable loss that I'm going to take over here in Wise Guy Trivia. Honestly, I think this whole trivia thing is negatively impacting my emotional well-being. So I'm just going to play this.
Your culture isn't good then, Paul.
I'm going to play this under protest before we even hit the sounder.
It's time for The Wise Guy, the world's fastest-growing Cardinals quiz show. The stakes are low. The winner gets absolutely nothing. Here's your hostess with a mostess, Dani Sureck.
Wise Guy Thanksgiving Week edition, Minnesota Vikings edition.
I feel like when they say the winner gets absolutely nothing, you should be offering up some green bean casserole.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Would either of you eat it?
No.
Wow.
Okay.
Well, no, I know. I've heard some good things about your green bean casserole, mostly from you, but yes.
It's all right, Danny. There are at least 2 entities that rank behind your green bean casserole in the power poll. The Jets, and then yours truly in trivia, okay? And I'm sort of like the Jets.
That's where I'm lumped in?
I'm sort of like the Jets because...
No, your casserole, not you.
I have 2 wins, and nobody even knows how I managed 2 wins. That's my similarity with the Jets. Let's go.
Well, Darren did get the most recent win last week, so he gets to choose...
I'm going to defer.
Okay. Paul, pick a number.
Take that ball in the second half, baby.
You know what? I think because we're going to come out of the gates, we're just going to go number 1. Number 1!
Okay, here we go. In 2003, the Cardinals knocked the Vikings out of the playoffs on a last-second touchdown from Josh McCown to wide receiver Nathan Poole.
Paul Allen on the radio call.
Which 1998 Cardinals draft pick was on the Vikings defense during that fateful final play of the 2003 season?
Okay, I was covering the Cardinals then. 98 draft pick on the Vikings defense at that time. 98 was a class of Pat Tillman. He was the 7th round pick. Now, if I could only remember the other 6 picks, I'd really be in business.
Where's the buzzer?
Yeah, that's a long. Jeez.
Thank
Come
you.
on, Omo.
Okay, all right. The corner out of Iowa, Tommy Oliver, Tommy Henry. Dang it.
First of all, the corner you're thinking of is Tom Knight, but that's not That's not the correct answer, because I've interviewed this gentleman about the McCown pool play multiple times.
Oh, you gotta be kidding.
Corey Chavis,
Corey.
draft nasty himself.
How many radio hits have I done with Corey Chavis? And I just fail in the moment.
Darren?
Tommy Henry. I'll take number 4, please.
This former Cardinals and Vikings defensive lineman was given the nickname the White Fox by radio analyst Ron Wolfley.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my goodness. I can picture his locker.
Is it? This is probably wrong, but I'm going to guess it anyways. Ross Kalaji?
That would be correct.
Okay.
Amazing.
Okay. Are you guys flashing him answers in there? I mean, is there a prompter
Where's
he's looking at?
Where's the accountability, Paul?
Has he hacked into the database?
Ross Kalaji, who I believe ended up as the strength coach at the University of Pittsburgh with James Conner, if I recall reading a recent article correctly.
If there was a minor leagues of wise guy trivia, I'd be sent down right now. This is not trending well. Honestly.
Question 2 or 3, Paul.
I have no idea how I remembered
Kipper's
that.
offense. Office. Let's go 2. I'm just going to go in order. Just take my beat down like a man. Here we go.
Okay.
Number 2.
Now, usually you like to blame me because you don't pay attention to numbers and years, so
Okay.
there's a
All
lot
right.
in this
Lock in
question.
here.
So yes,
Okay.
lock in.
Focus.
ADD.
Here we go, Paul. In the 1998 playoffs.
Not that it'll help, but I'll lock in. Here we go.
In the 1998 playoffs, the
Yep.
Cardinals' magical season ended in the NFC divisional round at Minnesota.
I was there. It was 15 below. If I don't get this right, I'm walking. Alex, move away from the door. I'm out of here. Here we go.
The following week, the Vikings were upset by the Falcons in the NFC Championship.
Oh, yeah.
This Vikings kicker, who had made 39 consecutive field goals, missed a 38-yarder with 2:18 to play, opening the door for Atlanta's comeback win.
Okay. I think I have this. Morton Anderson. No, are you serious?
Gary Anderson.
Gary Anderson.
Gary Anderson, who spells it S-O-N, Morton Anderson, the greatest Danish football player before Hjalte Froholt, spelled it with an E.
We don't give half points, Paul. You needed first and last name.
I have half a mind to walk 100 yards that way into the locker room to see if Hjalte Froholt is around, just to give Darren a beatdown, just to give him a headlock and wrestle him to the ground, Hjalte Froholt style.
Let's do these last ones for fun.
Okay.
Here we go, because I'm having fun.
I'm having lots of
I'm going to
fun.
hire the Danish Viking to take it out on Darren.
This one-time Vikings wide receiver signed with Arizona in 2006 and scored the first Cardinals touchdown ever recorded in what is currently known as State Farm Stadium.
Oh, yeah. I was there, too.
You're always there, Paul.
Troy Walters.
Correct.
Boy, Walt.
A 2-yard touchdown catch from Kurt Warner.
Okay.
Should we do the tiebreaker since everyone's having fun?
Darren, are you taking...
Is this a number one?
Are you taking some sort of memory boost, like supplement?
tell you something.
I mean, is there
As my wife well knows, I know all this garbage in my head. Could I give you the names of like all my cousins, or could I remember all the birth dates of my family? No.
Well,
It's
that's not important. This is.
pretty sad. But
Let's
I can
do the
tell you,
tiebreaker
Ross
for
Kalaji
funsies.
is the white fox.
Here we go. Closest to the number wins. Paul, pick up the pen. Let's go.
Okay.
It's okay.
All right. It's pick myself up off the
Here we
floor is
go.
what I need to do.
In
I feel
nine,
pretty dominant, I'll be honest.
In 9 games played against the Vikings, how many receptions did Larry Fitzgerald have against his hometown team?
9 games?
9 games.
Okay.
I'm just going to assume, since you didn't ask this week, that Darren does not want to do winner takes all.
Hell no.
Okay.
Paul, what answer?
The number of Chuck Foreman, 44.
I went with 61.
55.
Damn it.
Who's closest?
I actually wrote down 55 and then scribbled it out.
You know, it doesn't even matter who's closest because Darren won.
He's whining about not getting the bonus question.
Darren is now 11-2.
He went 4-0, and he's whining because he didn't get the bonus question. He's that student in the math class that nobody likes. He leaves the math class afterwards because he didn't get over 100 on the exam.
First of all, I sucked at math. That's why I'm a writer. Speaking of dominant,
He gets an atomic wedgie in the hallway.
I again had the best week in picks at 8-4, which is not a great week.
I'm so sick of hearing about these.
But Paul and Dani both went 7-5, so I picked up a game.
Come on.
So now my overall record: 113-55. Paul 111-57. Dani, not quite to 100 yet. 98-70.
Well, I need to stop picking these games with my heart and start picking them with my brain because I despise a lot of the teams.
I'm just
so I pick
picking
against
whoever
them.
is playing the Jets at this point.
I see.
I picked the Bears this week. That was a mistake. I picked the Steelers. That
I
was a
picked
mistake.
Washington over Dallas.
Oh, I know I picked Washington. Well, there's 3 of my 4 losses.
What really hurts is I had Cleveland on Thursday Night Football because they had won 6 out of 7 against Pittsburgh,
missed
like
that
on
one
Thursday
bad.
and in Cleveland. So I go, oh yeah, and then I didn't hit send. For some reason, I got torn away from the computer. When I went back to it, I'd seen in between that they were minus their 2 offensive tackles.
Oh,
so I changed it and sent it in. What's the rule in school? Like, always go with the first answer. Don't go back to your
with your gut.
Go
Scantron
with your
and
gut.
start. Yeah. Anyway, just another in a line of measly, lame excuses. So, back to Week 13 and the reality check that will be Minnesota weather, which we don't have to worry about this week because it is a dome. So
Okay.
I don't even care how cold it is.
It is a dome,
Yeah.
but you're going to have to. It's not like we walk through a terminal. You will be getting off the plane in. I'm assuming it'll be dark by the time we get there, so it'll be about 10 degrees, Paul.
Right.
So I would still wear a coat if I were you.
If I can handle 4 hours in the sideline and mentally get through that, then I can handle 4 minutes getting between the plane, the bus, and the hotel. So I consider myself, unlike Wise Guy Trivia, I consider myself equipped. So, we'll see.
I'm excited. This is my favorite stadium to visit.
I can't believe the Cardinals have not won in Minnesota since 1977. For their last 11 in Minnesota.
Yes, including the 98 playoff game.
That is a no comprendo right there.
And I think one of those games was still in St. Louis, and then they moved to Arizona and saw the rest of them. But Arizona, and it's not been. I mean, there's been close games, but never a win. So this would be kind of a big deal, obviously.
I'm going to add this to our concert T-shirt that we're putting out. It's Revenge Tour 2024 Arizona Cardinals. They took care of Sean McVay and the Rams, took care of Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers, ended that losing skid. They still have another shot at the Seahawks because they've now lost 6 in a row against Seattle. And now you're telling me they're 0 for the last 11 in Minnesota, so I'm putting Minneapolis on the concert tee.
Okay, well,
All right?
that's
Do you
very
need my
possible.
size?
Revenge Tour 2024.
I gotta ask.
Oh, no.
I know you were saying you're inside blah blah blah, but you also just mentioned the Cleveland game, which I'm sure you watched, just like all of us watched, with the beautiful snow coming down.
Right.
Should Kurt Warner thinks all these games should be in domes.
No.
Okay, here's my take on this, and this is from many years of experience from really being on the wrong end of a lot of these weather games. If it's a playoff game, it's too much of an advantage. I do consider it an unfair advantage. You can say, "Oh, get home field advantage." I get it, but when Miami had to go to Kansas City last year, and it's 14 below, or some sort of historic low temperature and ice. It's almost dangerous for these guys, for their lungs. I mean, you don't find out who's the better football team. You just find out who's better at surviving the elements. And that's what I don't like.
That's fair, is you don't want to play against the elements. That's why you get home field advantage, Paul.
It's always the response. I don't necessarily. Okay.
I say this. Look, when you are living or playing in a place like Kansas City.
And by the way, I thought the control room was supposed to be neutral, but go ahead.
Green Bay, Pittsburgh, Philly, all of these cold weather places that don't have a dome, that's because that is what the city wants and the city likes. And fair or not, what the fans want to a certain extent does play a role in what the stadium looks like. And it does create an advantage long before playoffs for the home team playing there and being used to those elements. And that's what many would describe as quote unquote football weather.
Like I said.
Now, I'm very glad that the Cardinals played somewhere that has a roof. Both can be true. Like, I don't want to be somewhere where it's either 120 degrees without a roof or it's minus 20 without
Not
a
only
roof.
do you have a roof, but you have a natural turf field. You have natural grass. And so that is truly the best of both worlds, in my opinion. I think there's only 14 NFL venues now that have natural grass. And like, if I'm a player and I'm considering two teams in free agency, do you want to go out on the MetLife turf, which has that horrendous reputation?
Probably not.
Or would you rather play at State Farm Stadium?
I mean, my knees hurt just walking across my rug.
Right.
So, but I'm old.
You know, to me, once again, when you work your whole season, you've been grinding since July, and you get to the apex of where you've been striving to get a playoff game, and all of a sudden it's 14 below and the field is covered in ice. For example, at Carolina, the NFC Championship game.
Yeah.
That was an ice rink. I mean, that field was so slick, and it's just disappointing because would the Cardinals have won that game against Cam Newton that year? Probably not. But you didn't really, in my mind, you left that field after 4 quarters and you didn't get a legit answer.
That's why you're not going to see a Super Bowl in Green Bay, in New York, in Philly,
well,
in Kansas
you've seen one
City.
in New York already. We have had one.
More times than not, I guess I should
agree
say.
with you.
Because they
Never underestimate
good
the
weather.
money. Well, I will say that as somebody who sat on the couch watching the Cleveland-Pittsburgh game, I thought it was glorious. I understand why people wouldn't want it. I understand that it might not be fair, but it's so good on television, especially in the days of beautiful 4K cameras.
Yeah, lake effect snow and big snowflakes and the whole thing. Yes, it's. I mean, it's why sports is the original reality TV.
By the way, Danny, who is first in line in the Jameis Winston fan club, he was mic'd up for that game, and the Browns had like a 14-minute mic'd up with Jameis Winston. It was unbelievably great.
It was right up there with a Ken Burns documentary. Is that what you're saying?
My favorite part was when they got him mic'd up, and see. I don't know if all teams would allow some of this stuff to go through, but there was one point where he went up to the line of scrimmage to try and get the Steelers to jump, and they played like the whole sequence of him, barking out the signals, and at the very end, when he's like, "Damn, can't somebody just jump off sides?"
Buda Baker is mic'd up for this week's Wired. So
That's
whenever
true.
That's going to be out, that should
Sooner
be some
rather
good
later.
stuff coming from Seattle. So,
you'd rather have it happen in a win.
Yeah. So by the way, here's my stat I'll leave you guys with, all right? Speaking of the Lions, Thanksgiving, the whole deal, you realize they have swept the AFC South by a combined score of 154-49.
The Lions have
Swept the entire AFC South, 4 wins against all 4 teams by a combined 154-49.
So they're good.
Meanwhile, Detroit against the NFC West, they beat the Rams in overtime, 26-20, beat the Cardinals by just 7, 20-13, and they beat the Seahawks 42-29. So for everyone who's looking at the NFC West and saying, mediocre football, hang on. First off, the NFC West has had to play the NFC North this year. Plus, they're beating up on each other, these teams. For example, Minnesota against the NFC West, as we mentioned, they beat the Niners, lost at the Rams, and they still have to play the Seahawks in Week 16. So
and the Cardinals this weekend.
And with Sam Darnold and all these career numbers, and once again, I got to see it to believe it. I know I was proven wrong by Geno Smith in Seattle. I was kind of sounding the same storyline last week.
Geno Smith wasn't very good.
He was good enough at extending the plays and keeping his eyes downfield and keeping the defense honest.
I really feel kind of bad for Paul. He spent how much of his offseason talking about J.J. McCarthy? What was your line about the 4th QB in the draft?
Oh, what was the line about that? My goodness.
Everybody was going to move up, and then somebody was
That's
going to
right.
want to trade with the Cardinals.
That's right. Yeah, the fourth QB was going to be the ticket for the Cardinals. What was the saying? See, this is just, once again, I see on here, apropos. This is apropos of my wise guy trivia performance right here. Short-term memory.
You don't even get to see
lacking.
McCarthy.
Are you disappointed about that? No J.J. McCarthy? No, see,
little bit.
here's the thing. For Paul, J.J. McCarthy was just a pawn. It was just a pawn in his draft,
Okay.
whatever.
Here's what I'm disappointed by.
Let there be a fourth QB. Thanks, Omo.
There you go. Thank you.
Omo was listening.
He owed me that one because earlier he's playing applause to coincide with Danny's take.
Have a better take, Paul.
You know. What I'm really disappointed about is I couldn't cash in on draft day the first round because the over-under in the sports books was first-round quarterbacks 4.5.
Oh, yeah.
It was the biggest absolute ever that there would be at least 5 first-round quarterbacks, including J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix, Michael Penix, right? Obviously, and then Caleb Williams and Drake May and Jaden Daniels. There were 6, and the over-under was 4.5. I mean, that was easy money. That was like Mortgage City right there. Anyway.
For somebody who doesn't gamble.
Well, the reason I know that is because when I went on that day on Wolf and Luke, I actually cited that stat. That's the only reason I know that stat. Anyway, any other it's Thanksgiving do's and don'ts? Danny, any other advisories for a couple Neanderthals like Paul and Darren, when it comes to Thanksgiving? Anything that we need to know?
Wear stretchy pants. So when you go back for seconds, you're not uncomfortable.
Here's my...
How many helpings of green bean casserole do you eat?
I'm not planning on having green bean casserole this year because I don't think it's going to be the Thanksgiving I'm going to. And
so is there like a hole in your soul when you don't get that?
no, I'll be okay, I think.
So I took, Danny, you've asked a few times, and I know you're not asking here, but I'll give you an update anyway. Cheeto. So I try to convince my wife and daughter that our dog is fat. He's
Which it's not. You showed me a picture.
No. I took Cheeto and I said, everyone gather around. I put Cheeto in front of the mirror. And I said, everybody go look at Cheeto. I said, now look at the picture that I took of Cheeto the first week we had him, which was about 6 months ago. It's like before and after.
Did you rescue Cheeto?
He is fatter
so now
than
now that he has
turkey right now.
A stable home and a roof over his head and family members who love him and want to give him treats.
So are you gonna get it all Ozempic for the holidays?
I like that. I like that. You know what, Darren? I'm going to add that to my list. I've always said, and I've been saying this for 20 years, the fastest way to $1 billion is off the backs of pet owners.
It's very smart.
So Ozempic for dogs.
There you go.
That's our idea. Plus, see, my original idea was a fat farm for dogs. I'm going to open up a fat farm for people to bring their dogs.
It's funny you bring that up.
A weight loss clinic.
I literally, and this is not nearly as funny as Ozempic for dogs. I just saw an article that was talking about price gouging in the veterinary field because people will pay whatever it takes for their pets. And so prices have gone out of control for vet services.
When I was growing up, one of our family dogs, Buster, who was just so perfect, was like really sick. And he was a small dog. Stop laughing, Paul. This is a sad story and now I'm laughing. Had like a really large tumor and he had cataracts and it was very clear.
It's not a tumor.
It was very clear he only had a few more months left in him. And my sisters and I were, in all seriousness, asking my dad to get him cataract surgery because we felt so bad that he might not be able to see well. And my dad was not having it.
You know how you solve this? Don't get a dang pet.
What?
No.
Well,
You know what? That tells me a lot about your personality. Just confirms a lot.
You
that
didn't
you
know
don't
about my
like
personality?
Pets. No, it just confirms
Here's
a lot.
the thing. It's the downside is just too great.
No, the upside is far greater.
The price gouging, by the way, does not shock me because what is a fair price in a free market capitalist society? What the market will tolerate.
Yeah, that's the problem.
That's how prices are set. We were at this party last year, and she's a physician herself. She's an MD. She's telling us how her dog had 3 ACL reconstructions, 3 different legs, a torn ACL, and I'm like,
Poor dog.
really? Were there really torn ACLs in dogs 20 years ago? Or is that something that's just sort of
You are both way too
Evolved.
cynical.
Well, how are they supposed to get back to the starting rotation? Now, I will say this, as long as we're talking about pets.
Okay.
Okay, I get it if you have a seeing eye dog. I get it if there's a service dog. What in the living, and I want to be bleeped so bad right now, is up with all these other idiots who've decided taking dogs into the damn mall or stores is cool? And with all due respect to my fine sister-in-law, she's one of them. Why is this right? What are you doing?
I don't do that.
Why are you even bringing... I understand you don't want to leave your dog in your car. Don't bring your dog shopping, for God's sake.
The other shocking happening with Cheeto, Danny, is when he does go in the car, which is far more than I've been led to believe.
Uh-oh.
Why
Behind
is that
my
so
back.
bad?
Travel in the car,
I'm
go
a car
in the car.
guy. I don't want the dog in the car.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm looking for the guy who keeps door dinging my car in our parking lot here.
Ooh.
That's a separate podcast. Cheeto apparently now will no longer ride in the back seat. He has to ride in the front seat.
He probably needs air on his face.
Does he put on a seatbelt?
So
They make those for dogs.
Oh, there you go. Seatbelts for dogs.
They are. I just said they already make those.
Oh, they do?
see somebody
Well, then
already
They
stick
make
with the-
everything.
Not Ozempic.
somebody already made our $1 billion, Darren. There you go. If there's seatbelts for dogs, there can be Ozempic
mean,
for dogs.
Green
Gladly.
Green bean casserole for dogs.
So I
Give me
think I know how
casserole.
you feel
Okay.
about people who put
Yeah.
their dogs in strollers.
So we started with Charles Dickens and Ghosts of Christmas Past, and so we'll end that way, full circle. Darren as Scrooge, bah humbug. And that'll do it for this edition of Cardinals Underground, brought to you by Pacific Office Automation.